Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Training Every Single Day, and thank you for tuning in and watching. I started off this morning with some strength work and some shoulder mobility, but I've been doing this YouTube thing for quite a while, and I was reminiscing on some of my earlier videos, and I remember I used to talk a lot about philosophy because at the time I was spending a lot of time thinking about that, and I think it's about time I go back and share some of the things I've been thinking about recently. I was reading some Robert Greene today, one of my favorite authors, and I follow him on YouTube as well, and he says that one of the biggest things that he wants to happen in the world is to fill the world with more bold people, that people fill their life with action and think later. And that reminds me a lot of Russian writer Dostoevsky would talk about a man of action, and how people who aren't exactly happy with their life and don't take a lot of action will often envy these people, but see themselves as more not those kinds of person, which everybody under a certain amount of effort can change the way that they are in almost every single day, every single way. And I'm training every single day. Guess it kind of rhymes. And one of the things that, I often think about is to focus on your own mortality, and that might help you take some action in your life and be more bold in several ways. There's a pretty famous Latin quote called Memento Mori, which means that you're mortal, and don't forget that you only have so much time on earth, so you really shouldn't be filled with timidity and should kind of fill yourself with a little bit more ambition, because a lot of the feelings and emotions that we have in our body are not really well adapted for the modern world. There are it's believed that we evolved from tribal societies where we live with 30 to 100 people for the rest of our lives, and there's no way to escape your reputation, that everyone's going to know every intimate detail about you, and all of these, anxieties and self-consciousnesses are, shared amongst everybody because everyone knows pretty much everything about each other. So a lot of that robs us of our confidence, which today we live in larger and much more disconnected societies. So, even though I live in a town, I might almost never see the same kind of people more than once. So there's really no reason not to be bold and kind of go against some of these feelings of anxiety and social anxieties. I'm not saying to just be a nuisance in public, but maybe go out and talk to some new people, try some new things. Try not to be too embarrassed of yourself. Maybe dress more boldly. I've seen a lot of musicians dress really flamboyantly, and I heard this one musician to say that more people should dress like cartoon characters or video game characters, which I feel is a little bit easier if you're a girl, but I try my best to dress nice and kind of dress like a cartoon character as much as society will permit me to right now. Another thing I've noticed, back to the training part, is that the shoulder mobility is coming along quite nicely if you've been following along with the past couple days and what I've been training. I do feel like the progress isn't coming as fast as I like it would to be, and this might be a lot more of a long-term progression of the shoulders, working to be able to do the L-sit pull-ups with the most mobility and the most stretch. I feel like that's very, an example that is pretty close would be how I do the dips most of the time. Is a very deep range of motion, and I can't do too many. I can really only do like one L-sit pull-up with really good mobility, and it's just going to take a long time to really build that scapula control and it's just going to be a long time process coming. So stay tuned. You'll see a lot of progress there. And then after I finish that, we'll see what I get into. So back to remembering that you're mortal. It's very important to remember that everyone's going to die. It might be a little grim, but it's also sometimes quite a bit liberating, knowing that, eventually you're going to leave everything behind. So you can more easily let go of lost possessions. And if you think about it more daily, you might deal with loss when it inevitably does come with much more dignity than you might if you kind of avoid the fact that you're going to decay, everything's going to break, and that you might need to find some sort of purpose in your life and other things like that. I spend a lot of time nowadays focusing on, development, self-development, self-improvement, that kind of thing, getting stronger, learning a lot, developing a lot of skills that I'm interested in and can, but I often feel and think about hedonic adaptation a lot, which means that, the more that hedonism is about, seeking pleasure and the most pleasurable things, and nothing else really matters besides that. But that happiness and feeling good feelings and, pleasures often will become your normal. There's several examples of it, like lifestyle inflation, where with the more money you make, you spend more and more money just to maintain your lifestyle, and your overall happiness doesn't really change. There's also examples of really rich and famous people, becoming addicted to any sort of thing, like food, drugs, sex, power, money, all those sorts of things, but end up, crashing backwards and end up dealing with a lot of mental issues and not overall being too well. And I always kind of had this feeling, even when I was a young child, I would remember that, maybe everybody kind of has the same experience for life. Like if you were to very simply put it, that you have good and you have bad in your life, good feelings, good experiences, good outlook, good consciousness, and, will, karma, whatever. It overall balances out. Whether it be that, the trust fund baby of a millionaire might, absolutely experience the most lavish lifestyles and foods and fabrics, but to them it's normal and they've never known anything else. But to maybe a third world refugee who has experienced war and shell shock and death all around them, they can find, some of the simplest pleasures, about the same amount of pleasure as the rich person eating caviar and their Lamborghini and their Bugatti and smoking their cigars with all their friends. That same, starving refugee might experience that same amount of relative pleasure and relative good consciousness, experience, and will just in, breathing fresh air and not being in absolute danger. They'll have the same kind of subjective experience and positiveness in them. And that's just, a personal thought I've kind of always thought about and held my whole life. And that kind of gives me nihilistic feelings about how, maybe nothing will really matter, because even if you end up succeeding, you're really not going to feel that much better than if you never succeeded. You'll probably have the same amount of bad feelings, the same amount of anxieties, the same amount of ups and downs all along the way. But overall, that's just my own thoughts. I'd like to know what you guys think. Maybe give me some more inspiration about pursuing some philosophy, because I kind of feel like I've hit a good amount there. I've lost some motivation to study that. And I just mainly focus on, I've been mainly learning a lot about history to kind of fill that void about a cognitive improvement, cognitive training. Because overall, this kind of channel is about more than just training the physical body. It's about, improving your brain and your mind and socially all at the same time. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, maybe give me a little fuel for some more cerebral content coming along the way. I'm not sure if I'm going to focus too heavily on this in the training videos. The main focus will still be about training, and the content will mainly be about training. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.